Hey guys, Creator Mom. So I'm still watching the show Being Erica, surprisingly, because sometimes after a season of a show, they get lame sometimes, especially like these kind of like shows that are about like life and like drama and stuff like that. They just sometimes tend to get lame to me, in my opinion. Maybe I like the parts where there's like more conflict. Anyways, so I just wanted to talk about this episode that I watched. And so what happened is, so Erica, like I said in my previous videos, has this opportunity with this therapist to go back in time and do revisions on all the regrets in her life, right? Of which she claims she has a lot. But the thing is that she finds that when she goes back in time to try to change things, basically she can only truly change things that like affected her and had to do with her. Like, you can't really go back and change things to control other people's lives and to prevent other people from feeling heartache or whatever. You can only do it like for yourself. I think that's what I'm seeing as the pattern. Because okay, so like for instance, one of her best friends is a guy, and like he ended up with this girl and got married and was in this really long relationship, and that girl like ended up cheating on him, like his wife, and then he like ended up going back with her, like anyways, Erica realized like she actually like that they have a connection, that they should be together, you know what I mean? So she tries to go back in time because they met in college. So she tries to go back in time and kind of like interfere and intercept with her, with their relationship, so that like they won't end up being together, you know what I'm saying? So that maybe she could be with him in the future. So what happens is they're in college, and the girl who's interested in her guy friend is inquiring about him to Erica, and Erica's like, no, he's not your type, like you wouldn't want to be with him, he's gay, you know. So then like the next day or whatever, the guy friend confronts Erica about it, and he's like, oh, like you told her like I was gay. And then she's like, oh, like she was embarrassed that he like found out that she did that. And he was like, well, anyways, thanks for doing that, like, because actually it worked for my good, because we got to talking and I got to explaining like that I'm not gay, and that like, and she asked me on a date. So even though Erica tried to intercept them meeting and having a connection, she couldn't stop it. She couldn't stop it. It happened anyway, because like, you can't really control other people's like choices, you know? But in the end, like when she gets back to the future, blah, blah, like it works out through her being genuine and open, honest with this guy friend about how she feels about him. And he actually kind of feels like that about her too. She just was like, she let him have it. Like she was just honest with him. After that, he decided that, yeah, actually that relationship is not right for me. I think I do want to be with you, you know what I mean? So it could not happen through her trying to control the circumstances. In other words, it had to happen in a more genuine, authentic, organic way. But things pertaining to her own personal regrets, she could change. Like she had this regret about who she lost her virginity to, because the guy was like a jerk, you know, and he ended up like filming them having sex and stuff. So she went back in time and she was able to change that, because she's only in control of herself, right? She didn't change the fact. She just, you know, went back to that moment and decided, I'm not going to have sex with you, right? So, and everything she changes kind of has like a ripple effect. Now, there was one regret on her list that her therapist was like, you cannot go back and change this. It was a death. He's like, you can't, you know, you can't fool around with death. When a person is gone, they're gone, you know? it was her brother's death. She wanted to go back and revise that. But she told her therapist, like, don't worry, I'm not going to revise it. Like, I'm not going to intercept his death. I just want to go back and maybe be with him, or maybe just make those last moments better. So she goes back to the day and the night that her brother dies. And what happens was that he was like having a fight with his parents because they wanted him to follow a certain path in life. They wanted him to go to college, you know, to do the XYZ. And the kid is like, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to follow my heart. I don't want to do that. So they're just arguing. And then what happens is later that night, he goes out to the barn and he's smoking weed. And they assume that they don't really truly know what happened, but they assume that he fell asleep while a butt, you know, was still burning and caught all this hay on fire. And it was just, he couldn't get out of the barn on time. So she goes back and she goes into the barn with him. She's sitting on his bed talking with him about how he just had a fight with his parents and everything. And, you know, she has so much emotion, so much love for her brother. She tries to, like, just allow it to happen, right? But she can't. So she's sitting there talking to him, and she just rips up his weed, you know, just, well, actually, no, then she went out to the barn, I think, and started ripping up his weed and throwing it on the ground so that he wouldn't end up smoking and then causing that fire. Which worked. It worked. He didn't die that night. And it totally changed the whole ripple effect on their lives. Like, she woke up and she was in a completely different work position. Like, the whole, or their lives had changed. Her brother was alive. She was like, oh my God. And it's crazy because when she goes back in time, like, it's fucking crazy. It's like you're, like how they say you're jumping timelines. So the mom's like, Erica, what's wrong with you? You know, because when she goes back to the future, back in time, like into the ripple effect, like everybody's doing things as normal, but she has to kind of catch up with what's going on. She's in a totally different work position at work. Her brother's like an architect, excuse me. And she's just like, oh my God, like, you're alive. And he's like, what's wrong with you? Well, anyways, turns out because you can't circumvent death, when she's visiting with her brother there at her parents' house, when she wakes up in the future or whatever, he leaves, and then they get a phone call that her brother died in a car accident. So she was like taken back again, and there was the heartache all over again. So yeah, she realized that she couldn't fucking circumvent death, that wasn't gonna happen, and that she would have to actually re-experience that. So that was like even more painful. She goes back to the therapist, and he is like pissed off at her. He's like, you promised that you wouldn't try to prevent his death, you know? You fucking promised. He gets really angry at her. I think that you're not supposed to do that either. Like, it's probably like a law of the universe. So she's like, I couldn't help it. I just couldn't help it. She couldn't control herself. Like, she had to try it, you know? But again, you can't control other people's destinies and like lives, really, you know? You can't control their choices or whatever happens to them, essentially. You can only really control yourself. So then she's like, send me back, right? I'll do it again, and I'll just let it be as it was gonna be, like him dying when he was younger in the barn fire, you know what I'm saying? She goes back and actually sits through that now, and actually just soaks in her brother and just allows what's gonna happen to happen. And you know, and then when she got back to the future, everything was like the same again, like how it was originally, pretty much. Except for the fact she did change one thing. Like when she went back for the second time, she told her brother to like write a letter or journal out how he feels to his parents, you know what I'm saying? Instead of like, because they had just had that argument. So she's like, why don't you just write them a letter? Like sometimes, you know, whatever, it's easier to come across when you write something down. So the brother writes the letter and he goes out to the barn and all of that happens, right? So like in the morning or that night or whatever, Erica finds the letter that the brother wrote and she goes out and she buries it, right? She buries it in a spot and then she remembers so that when she goes back to the future, she can dig it up. Because what happens is every year her and her parents and her sister go to this farmhouse that they were at where her brother died to kind of have like a commemorative like dinner in his remembrance or whatever. So when they're having this dinner, she goes out, digs up the letter and brings it to her parents or whatever. So that was one way that she could control, that she found to bring more enrichment and more specialness like to this occasion or whatever, like for her brother's words to like come across to the parents, you know. And then they all ended up laughing over like the things the brother used to do, and it became more of like a joyful experience than like such a sad one, you know. And that's really what Erica wanted to do. Like that was really what she wanted, was to make this remembrance dinner, this commemorative dinner, like a better experience for her and her family, where they remember like and talk about the good things about her brother. So anyways, yeah, she can't go back and change death. She can't go back and control other people's shit, really. Only herself. And I just, you know, I just find it pretty cool. And she's learning to be like more honest and more authentic, and it's leading her into like really good places.